Hey, it's a week 15 preview plus the playoff odds. Welcome to the FTN Fantasy Schatz and Tanier NFL podcast. I am Aaron Schatz. You know me as the DVOA guy from FTN Fantasy. He is Mike Tanier. You follow his Substack at miketanier.substack.com. So many big games this week. Bills, Lions, Eagles, Steelers, Rams, 49ers tonight. We're going to look at all of it. Well, not all of it. We're not looking at the Arizona Cardinals against the New England Patriots, for example.
That's a big game for the Cardinals.
It's a reasonably big game for the Cardinals.
Patriots got a bunch of guys back from injury. They're going to try to make a little spoiler run at the end,
Yeah. But we're not going to talk about that game. We're going to talk about a lot of other games because it's a big weekend. Yes. But don't forget first our sponsor, which is Underdog Fantasy, the easiest place to play fantasy sports and the fastest growing app in the industry. Underdog offers a new customer FTN special with up to $1,000 on your first-time deposit. You can play all their weekly contests like the onside kick, the double doink, and the 2-minute drill. Head over to Underdog for a deposit match up to $1,000 when you sign up with code FTN. That is $1,000 extra. NFL season is in full swing, and you want to enjoy it with Underdog Fantasy. Let's start with Thursday night because we've got a good one tonight, and that is the 7-6 Rams at the 6-7 49ers. The Rams make the playoffs 58% of the time if they win, 30% if they lose. The 49ers make it 11% of the time if they win, 0.4% if they lose.
They'll cling to that 0.4% too. I'm surprised the Rams are at 30% if they lose. I guess that's just they have a win over the Seahawks in their bank, and the Seahawks could fall off, and they still are just in position to win this division.
What surprised me is the Rams' offense is 7th right now, and they're 4th in the second half of the season, but they're still not as high as I think people think they are.
Right.
I think people think the Rams, because the Rams, when they play well, they play so well. I think people think the Rams offense based on that game against the Bills is like super awesome. And it's really not super awesome.
No, I think there is a lot of recency bias that this team with familiar players popped up on the radar with this huge upset when they've been kind of in the rearview mirror all season. And yeah, they're 6th in DVOA.
7th in offense.
7th in offensive DVOA, 15th in yards per play on offense. And by the way, 28th in yards per play allowed on defense.
Yes, their defensive DVOA is better than that. It's 22nd.
Okay, but it's mediocre at best.
Yes, the defense is mediocre at best. And that's despite all the quality young players on the defensive line, right? You know, you've got Jared Verse and you've got Fisk and Kobe Turner, but the secondary is not playing well.
Secondary is not playing well and is dealing with an injury. Cornerback Kobe Bryant is out tonight, as is tight end Tyler Higbee. They have not missed him much recently, but he's also out. Guard Alaric Jackson, and they got a lot of great play against the Bills from their interior line, was questionable with it did not play on practice on Wednesday. His status appears to be up in the air. 49ers injury report is a mess. But there's some decent news. It sounds like Nick Bosa is going to play from some of the things.
Trent Williams still out, but Nick Bosa may be back.
Williams is out, as is Ben Bartch, who's been playing left guard for them. So they're down to rotating guys at left guard. Running back Isaac Guerendo originally sounded like he was out. Now Adam Schefter is saying he'll play. The sportsbooks haven't put any props up for him. So they're kind of questionable whether Guerendo plays. If he doesn't play, the running backs for the 49ers are down to Patrick Taylor, Israel Abanaconda. Pitt fans might remember. He was phenomenal for Pitt a couple years.
Yes, my Abanaconda does not want some. Unless it's got buns on.
What's that?
My Abanaconda.
That's all I'm going to remember as Anaconda. Okay, Abanaconda, yeah. Oh, God, you broke me. He has 22 career carries. Patrick Taylor is also on their bench. He's been on the Packers bench for years. If we don't get Guerendo, we'll probably get some Debo playing running back as well.
I do think it's actually, speaking of running back, a Kyron Williams game because the 49ers are 20th in DVOA against the run, but 4th against the pass. The Rams are only 31st in open field yards. where the 49ers are really good. So there won't be a lot of long Kyron Williams run.
Right.
But I'll bet you there's a lot of 4s and 5s.
A lot of 4s and 5s, and Williams wasn't great against the Bills, but he moved the chains. Again, a lot of that, if you saw that, there was a really good interior offensive line play. And I want to be a little more comfortable with Alaric Jackson's status before I went with that.
The 49ers defense, by the way, is 6th overall, but 30th in the red zone.
Interesting.
And the Rams offense is very good in the red zone. I mean, they're about as good as they are everywhere.
Meanwhile, the 49ers, I don't have their DVOA, but their goal-to-go conversion rate on offense is 27th in the league. As we know, Kyle Shanahan loves him some short field goals when he gets down there. And he doesn't have running backs now, which might make him a little even more conservative.
Brock Purdy is really good at deep passing this year, and the Rams defense is 28th.
Ooh.
So that could be something to watch for. I feel like that's not Debo, right? Like that's probably like Pearsall and Juwan Jennings. And Debo's just not as Debo-y this year.
He's Debo-y on the socials. He's letting us know all of his feelings, but he's not very Debo-y this year. And again, he usually doesn't like having to play running back, but he might. Yeah, it's Juwan Jennings. There's been a little bit of Pearsall. Kittle was very strong in the game against the Bears. He was opening up things downfield, and he's healthy now, so that's part of it as well.
And here's an interesting, both the Rams offense and the 49ers defense get worse as the offense needs more yards to go on third down.
Okay.
So it's a weak, right? They need to get into good third down situations, but it's a weakness that both teams have. So they sort of match each other.
Interesting. So you're saying the Rams offense gets worse in third and long.
Yes. Okay. But so does the 49ers defense, interestingly.
49ers defense, which should, in historically, third and long was time for Bosa to murder people.
Bosa's been out.
But he's been out or he's been limited, and you haven't gotten as much of that. Here's one for my prop betting habits, and I will not be going to bed early tonight because it's Thursday night, and I've been sick. I want to stay up and enjoy this game. The 49ers outscore opponents 73-37 in the first quarter, while the Rams in the first quarter have been outscored 76-27 in the first quarter. This is
I actually wrote this down as the Mike Tanier go to bed early special.
We're on the same wavelength. Yes. Take the first. I might go first half, and I'll probably go first quarter 49ers. And that's the thing for this, because I think for the Rams to win, they need to stay on schedule. They need to be in a position like they were last week where they're playing with the lead. I don't think that they're going to be able to catch up against the 49ers.
Hitchhiker's Pie points out that by the ESPN receiver metrics, getting open, Debo gets worse every year. It's just his yards after the catch ability that stayed elite.
That scans with kind of what you see, where he's just not open, and it's all the scheme him the ball stuff, which is harder to do when he's got to be more of a focal point because you don't have an Ayuk and you don't have a McCaffrey to, draw away some of that defensive attention.
The other thing we talked about on Monday is that the 49ers are coming off a game where they just sailed through the second half, whereas the Rams are coming off a game where they had to put in their everything all the way through a game with a ton of points. And so it's in San Francisco, and the Rams having to travel on a Thursday after playing in such a big game. Like, is there going to be one of those Thursday night letdowns here? And I think that that's sort of built into the line a little bit, that San Francisco is favored by 2.5.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't necessarily love – I could probably go money line if I went with San Francisco straight up. But I feel them. I feel them making a late charge, with their backs against the wall, especially against the Rams team that I think, again, there's a little bit of recency bias built into what our expectations are.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that. San Francisco on this one.
Yep.
If we're going to make a pick, and the money line rather than the 2.5 probably makes sense.
Yeah. And Seahawks fans have to root for the Niners too. Seahawks need the Rams kind of put away to get things a little comfortable for them because they got a big matchup coming.
Sunday's 1:00 slate is not great.
No.
But the best game in the 1:00 slate is the 6-7 Dolphins at the 8-5 Texans. Texans make the playoffs 99.5% of the time if they win.
Woo!
And 92% if they lose.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
Dolphins 25% with a win and 3% with a loss. And I'll point out the Dolphins offense is 23rd in DVOA, but since week 8, when Tagovailoa came back, it is 12th, which I still think is not as high as we think it should be.
Yeah.
Right? This team, with everything healthy on offense, should have been higher than that. And the fact that it's only 12th is actually a bit of a problem.
It is a bit of a problem. Now, I've got two stats to go along with that. Tua, in his last 6 games, more or less since his return, a 77.8% completion rate across 6 games with 14 touchdowns and 1 interception. He has been lights out efficient. At the same time, the Dolphins, for the season, only 29 passing plays of 20-plus yards. That's down in like the bottom 5 in the league. That's down with like teams like the Patriots. Tyreek is 19 of 32 on deep passes. Those are normal Tyreek numbers. But Waddle is just 9 of 13 on deep passes, and no one else on the team has been targeted more than 6 times.
Also, their running game has been terrible.
Interesting, yeah.
Despite the speed of A-Chain and Mostert,
yes.
The blocking has not been good. They are 30th in run DVOA, and the best run defense in the league by DVOA is the Houston Texans.
Interesting. Now, A-Chan's been very useful in the receiving game for them. He's been
yes, but as a runner, they're not getting the runs that they got last year. Like, it's just not happening. Right.
There's something about the way they're doing things which isn't optimized, even with everybody healthy, even with, Odell is kind of running around doing stuff every week. What's left of Odell, it's not the same as when they had Berrios and guys like that. So it is a little less than optimal. At the same time, we're dealing with a Texans team that has not been optimal in any way, I guess, except pass rush.
No, I mean, the Texans have been super optimal on defense. Their run defense is fantastic. Their pass rush is number 1 in ESPN's pass rush win rate. Miami is average pass blocking.
Okay.
And then you flip it around the other side. Miami is average pass rushing, and the Texans' pass blocking is terrible.
A couple of notes on that. Terron Armstead, left tackle, did not practice with a knee. He was out for most of the game last week. Patrick Paul filled in for him and played pretty well. Meanwhile, on the Texans' offensive line, guard Kenyon Green is probably back. And you may be like, ew, who cares? Because he was like a big part of the problem in the past. But in his absence, center Juice Scruggs moved to guard. Jarrett Patterson replaced Scruggs at center, and that kind of stabilized things a little bit, but Scruggs is now hurt. So they need Green back to take over the position that he played poorly in before he got hurt, because now they have to trust Patterson at center and Scruggs. So it's a mess on the Texans' offensive line. And I tweeted this earlier, or I blue skied this earlier. The most dropbacks under pressure of any quarterback in the NFL, you guessed it, it's
C.J. Stroud.
C.J. Stroud. His completion rate on 198 dropbacks when pressured is only 50.7. He's good at running away and trying to get the ball downfield, but to whom and under what circumstances?
The line is Texans -3. I like both the Dolphins +3 and the under 47.5.
I do like that under. This would be more of a defensive game than we think of.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it.
Chop Robinson in this game. Chop Robinson coming on the last few weeks. Miami's rookie edge rusher.
Also worth pointing out, Bradley Chubb has practiced for the first time since last year. I don't think we'll see him on Sunday, but if the Dolphins get a win and they're playing down the stretch, you might see a little bit of Bradley Chubb rotating with Chop Robinson and Sayer, who played very well last week.
4 p.m. is when the good games are. So let's start with the Bills 10-3 at the Lions 12-1. We're going to talk about the Super Bowl odds here because this is the most important game for the Super Bowl. The Bills make the Super Bowl in 30% of the Sims if they win this, 24% if they lose. And the Lions, it's 50% if they win, 44% if they lose. That's how much my numbers love the Lions.
Unbelievable. 50% chance of winning this.
It really is like, do you know there's teams in the NFC besides Detroit and Philadelphia? Technically, there are.
There are. They're amazing. Like, the Vikings are really good. I just wrote about the Packers. They're really good, but you're stuck saying, like, look at the Lions. Look at the Lions. By the way, look at the Lions injury report. We were gloom and doom a couple weeks ago. It looks like Josh Pascal was limited in practice. He might be back. Alan McNeil, who suffered a concussion, was in and out of the game last Thursday. He looks like he's back. Taylor Decker at right tackle, that's critical. Looks like he's back. And both starting cornerbacks, Carlton Davis and Emmanuel Mosley, are off the injury report. So this grim injury report, which does have some guys like Malcolm Rodriguez on the reserve, is now down to DJ Reader, who it sounds like they're being extra cautious with.
Hitchhiker's Pie has a question for me about deriving win probability from DVOA pregame. The playoff odds report uses a very simple formula that just uses the ratings of the two teams and the home field advantage. That's it. It's not complicated. It doesn't use like specific matchups or anything like that. It's just it's easy. It's a back of the envelope type of thing.
That's the playoff odds report.
That's the playoff odds one, right? As opposed to when I'm making picks, it's a little more complicated.
Right. That level of granularity when you're trying to go 6 games down the road is not
right. Is sort of not doesn't make any sense.
False precision.
Big special teams mismatch here.
Oh,
with the Lions especially having an advantage on kick and punt returns. The Bills are 31st in net kickoff value and 29th in net punt value.
Wow, I completely other than the block kick the other day, I completely lost track of that. So their Bills are giving up long returns.
Yeah, the Bills are giving up not long returns, and the Lions get long returns.
Interesting.
The Bills are number 1 in blown blocks forced on run plays, but they're 31st in open field yards. So if you get past the front of the Bills, it's happy running time. And boy, Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, they're going to get some.
They're going to get some. I don't know how many blocks you're going to blow up against this offensive line. And if you do, they will run delays and traps on you. But yeah, the Bills' run defense overall is 4.7 yards per rush allowed, which is 7th worst in the NFL. Meanwhile, the Lions are 8th best in the NFL at 4.6 yards per carry on offense. A lot of the teams in front of them have a scrambling quarterback. A mobile quarterback usually juices your yards per carry a little bit. So what you're seeing from the Lions is pretty much pure running. And that and the special teams are 2 big tilts.
Iceman asks me if the Lions' punt returns have gotten worse since Khalif Raymond has been out. I'm not sure of the answer to that question, but their overall special teams have not been as good in the last few weeks as they were in the first few weeks. That is true.
They were like at a historic rate for a while.
Well, they had that one game against the Titans that was insane, but they were at a historic rate. Even, they were very good. And then that one game against the Titans just made things insane. These are the 2 best teams in the league in yards after the catch.
Interesting.
But they're a really good defenses against yards after the catch. The Lions are 5th in yak against, and the Bills are 9th in yak against.
Bills have really been relying on a lot of get the ball out quickly and let those guys create, as opposed to what we're used to with them, which is hero ball. Big Bills defense injury report. Russell Douglas, who got knocked out of the game against the Rams, did not practice this week. So far, the rhetoric around Zool is not good. We saw an undrafted journeyman come in to replace him. I've been trying to figure out what happened to Khair Elam, who was their first-round pick a couple of years ago out of Florida.
He sucks.
He played poorly. He looked like they put him in against the Dolphins and he didn't get destroyed, but he apparently must have blown some coverages or something like that. He is deep in the
on the depth chart. He is deep on the depth chart. Yeah.
Right. Whereas they didn't trust him to put him in when they had an emergency against the Rams. He didn't even play. So I don't know what they're going to do with Zool out at this point against somebody like, I'm assuming that Banford would get Amon-Ra St. Brown, and then somebody has to cover Jameson.
Yeah, I would guess that is the case because Banford is their best corner pretty easily. When you're talking about Detroit and Jared Goff, you have to look at pressure rate, and this is, of course, all available on the FTN Stats Hub, which you should be subscribing to. The Bills are 11th in pressure rate, and Goff is 24th among quarterbacks in DVOA under pressure. That's not news. The best quarterback in the league under pressure this year is Josh Allen.
Oh, that is not surprising. I posted some raw numbers earlier, and both Josh Allen and Joe Burrow have phenomenal pressure numbers this year.
And here's another one from the FTN Stats Hub, and this one makes me think that the Bills have a pretty good shot here.
Okay.
Jared Goff is, we know, much better against man coverage than zone coverage. If you think about the receivers that he has, that makes sense. Amon-Ra St. Brown especially.
Right.
The Bills are 4th in frequency of zone coverage. They are much more of a zone coverage defense, which is harder for the Detroit offense to face up against.
Right. The question being, if you're going to be sitting in zone and you're just going to get gashed against the run, which is one way that the Lions attack that.
Right. Yeah, it's the gashing against the run. Like I said, the Bills' run defense is better than people think it is.
Yes.
But they give up the big long runs.
Right, and it could be a real problem in this game.
The line is Lions -2.5.
Here's a question for you. Assuming I think the Lions are going to win, I'd probably take them -2.5. You've got this Bills team that's been traveling back and forth across the country. How should I feel about the Bills coming out of this if they take a loss? They pretty much eradicated their chance at home field advantage to the playoffs. Like what should be my doomerism level for that team?
I feel like the Bills have shown they're good enough that they can win on the road, but you would rather be at home. I mean, I think that the home field advantage and they're going to flip the switch in the playoff stuff brings the Chiefs even with the Bills, but it doesn't make them better than the Bills because there's a long way to go at this point between the two.
Right.
And I feel like the Ravens' inconsistency drops them, so they're about. I feel like those three teams end up kind of even going into the playoffs.
Right.
So I feel like would the Bills rather win the number 1 seed? Yeah. Did they screw themselves last week? Mostly, yeah. Like this, that was the game they needed to win. This is a harder one.
Right.
They're not screwed. They are still probably the favorites to come out of the AFC if they're the 2 seed. Now, the question is, would they become the 3 seed and then have to go to Pittsburgh?
Oh, gosh. Now, I think
depends. Some of your doom and gloom about the Bills depends on the game that we're about to talk about next, which is the Steelers and the Eagles.
Right. You don't want that Steelers team hanging around at that point. I'm just double checking. You get Patriots, Jets, Patriots at the end for the Bills there, which gives you some margin for error from somebody clipping you from behind.
Yeah, the very, very good chance that the Bills win their last 3 games.
Right. So it's tricky because I'm just trying to prognosticate this AFC. I'm trying to also get excited for anything but waiting for the championship game or waiting for the divisional round of the playoffs.
Oh, the AFC playoffs, I think.
Well, the playoffs will be good.
I think the Steelers are sort of interesting, and then the Ravens, Chiefs, and Bills. The AFC playoffs has a lot of interesting stuff in it.
Yeah, we have to get there.
The NFC, I mean no disrespect to the Packers and Vikings, but doesn't it feel just kind of like they might win first-round games just to go get killed by Philadelphia and Detroit? I don't know.
Yeah, it does a little bit, although we're going to talk about the Eagles.
I mean, obviously Green Bay and Detroit was close, so there's no guarantee that Green Bay gets killed by Detroit. But
No, but when you look at the prop bets, because I do prop bets like to win 1 playoff game, to lose in the second round, and you only get the Vikings and Packers at +300, +250. Everyone's like, oh, they're gonna go murder the Buccaneers or Falcons or Seahawks and then get hammered afterwards. But we'll see. We're about to talk about the Steelers and Eagles anyway. I'm taking the Lions in this game.
I think I'm taking the Bills.
All right.
I think +2.5, or maybe the money line to get a plus whatever money line it is. This is a closer one than I think DVOA thinks it is.
Okay.
But it is in Detroit, so it's indoors, and Detroit is the home team, and that is an advantage.
Right.
It should be a really good game.
That's a second straight road game. I know that doesn't actually matter when you do the analytics, but when I look individual basis, that's a second straight road game for the Bills, going all ping-ponging around the country. +110 is the only money line you'd be getting on that, by the way, if you take the Bills.
Steelers at Eagles, 4 p.m. Steelers make the Super Bowl 14% when they win and 10% when they lose. But more importantly, their chances of getting the 1 seed are 4 times higher if they win this game.
Is it 4-1, 4% to 1%?
No, it's 24-6 or something.
They're still in that line. Wow.
And the Eagles' Super Bowl chances are almost no difference depending on this game, but their chances of getting the 1 seed are twice as high if they win this.
What's the numbers about?
It's something like 15 and 30.
15 and 30, right. Of course, simultaneously another game is impacting that, so it's very theoretical.
Right. This game is really important for the teams in the other game and vice versa.
Yes. These games operate in sort of like a tandem.
And most of the country, not me, but most of the country will be able to see both of these games because it is a double header weekend. For those who don't know. which means that for most of the country, you will be getting Bills-Lions on CBS and Steelers-Eagles on Fox at the same time, or they're vice versa. I believe it's Bills-Lions is the CBS game because we're not getting it here because we're getting the Patriots and the Cardinals.
This is Broncos Colts erasure, ladies and gentlemen. And
we're going to hit the Broncos and the Colts in a little bit. There is a large swath of the country that's getting the Broncos and the Colts, I will admit.
Yeah, because the Broncos are a large swath of the country where nobody.
Right. There aren't a lot of people who live in the 506 sports map for, not to get political, but the 506 sports map for Colts Broncos looks like one of those Donald Trump election maps where they like all this land that has no people in it goes red, except it's colored blue by the guy who does 506 sports, I think.
Hashtag.
Of course, George Pickens is probably not playing, so that's a big deal.
Yes.
Everybody's noting, are we reading the comments? Yes, like 5 people in a row noted that George Pickens isn't playing. We just hadn't said it yet, people. We knew George Pickens is probably not playing. Russell Wilson still has the best DVOA in the league on deep passes, even if you take out Pickens. Most of the deep passes without Pickens go to Calvin Austin. So that will be interesting.
At Calvin Austin, they were using Mike Williams last week. He had a couple of catches. And when we remember, deep is 15 plus, he will throw up the seam to Freiermuth, and Freiermuth catches in 16 to 18-yard range. So they're not hopeless on that. But I'm sure you have written down that the number one defense against deep passes in the NFL per DVOA
is the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yes. So
so it's a huge strength against strength matchup. And another one, here's another strength against strength. Number 5 pass rush win rate, Steelers. Number 3 pass blocking, Eagles.
Interesting. So that takes away some of the strength of the Steelers, but the Steelers can neutralize one of the Eagles' strengths because the Steelers have allowed only 6 rushing plays of 20-plus yards. The Eagles have 19 rushing plays of 20-plus yards and obviously really try to get a lot of big plays out of Saquon.
It is interesting that they haven't allowed the long runs because the Steelers' defense is only 14th in DVOA against the run.
Interesting.
So the Eagles, Saquon may be able to get a lot of those 4s and 5s.
You want to get those 4s and 5s. You want Jalen to get some 4s and 5s, and you want to stay ahead of the sticks. You do not want to be in these split situations the way Hurts has been playing against the Blitz.
The Steelers also play a lot of cover 3, so I went and looked up on the FTN Stats Hub. Hurts is 21st against cover 3.
That's interesting. I don't know how often the Eagles see that.
Yeah, I don't know either. Bill Houston asks, do we see the Eagles getting their passing offense on track? We talked about this some on Monday. Is Goddard playing this week?
Goddard is on IR.
Goddard went on IR. So it's really so much A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith because the fall off after that is huge. No disrespect to Dotson and Calcaterra, but the fall off after that is huge.
The fall off is intense. Part of it is Hurts isn't a big Dotson fan. I don't know why that is. Calcaterra was a little bit involved. A little tiny bit of help for the Eagles, someone that Hurts did like to throw to occasionally in the past and is also helpful on returns. Britton Covey is practicing again. That's a very tiny piece there. But as the Eagles are trying to figure out how they're going to get offense besides just, this entire week listening to A.J. Brown talk about what Brendan Graham said about what Jalen Hurts said.
Well, what is up with that?
Graham is.
Can I write that off as just sports talk radio nonsense?
It's what we do here. But Brandon Graham went 15 years without throwing shade on anybody. He gets hurt, and next thing you know, he's dropping bombs all over Lord's creation. I don't know what happened. It was like Dark Brendan came out here,
which suggests that he didn't mean to.
He didn't mean to. Right? He didn't mean to, but he was right in the wrong place at the wrong time. And 94 WIP is insane. It's crazy town. So that said, not all is well in terms of how the Eagles are functioning in the passing game, whether they're mad about it or not.
Hitchhiker's Pie points out the Eagles have the fewest pass attempts in the league by 40 and the most rush attempts in the league by 40. So they are zigging as the league zags. Although, of course, part of that has to do with their record. But, the Steelers also have a really good record of the Bills and the Chiefs, and they're not running as much as the Eagles are. Xavier82, is it crazy to say the Bills would prefer playing the Steelers on the road or the Chiefs on the road instead of running into the Ravens at any point in the playoffs?
Steelers, I would say, yeah. If you look at the Steelers' overall profile as a team compared to the Ravens or even the Chiefs.
My guess is everyone is afraid of the Chiefs because of this belief that they're just going to win every game by 3 points. But the Bills did lose to the Ravens by a lot early in the year.
Good point. They got hammered. They did get hammered. And the Steelers just look like a more vulnerable team up and down.
Yeah. Pick is Eagles -5.
I think the Steelers cover because I don't trust the Eagles to cover any kind of spread. The way they win games these days, coming off the last couple wins, particularly one against Carolina. But I was looking at things like field goal percentage against, hidden points, starting field position, all these things that the Steelers have in their back pocket that aren't super sustainable. And like that's kind of been keeping them going through this. Takeaway, they lead the league in takeaways, which again, I think that's part of their system. And that's not like luck or anything like that. But that's
I don't think of takeaways are a mixture of luck and skill. Yeah.
I mean, a net, by the way. Yeah. They have 13 fumble recoveries, which leads the league. But again, they get a lot of hits on quarterbacks. That impacts that.
They have a lot of fumbles.
Yes.
Fumbles. Right?
So
that's more skillful. Right.
And they're playing extreme ball control offense, which limits turnovers on that. And still, when I look at all that, I don't see them as a sustainable Super Bowl contender level team. But I think they cover. I think I
would pick the Eagles. Okay. The system doesn't make a pick on this. This is a game. Okay. This is a game to not gamble on. But I think if I had to, I would take the Eagles.
You take the Eagles. You're comfortable there. By the way, weather report is mild. I got to keep an eye on these December weather reports. Nothing happened in Philly.
The whole country is mild, I believe.
It's all mild.
Yeah.
It's a very mild weekend coming.
Colts 6-7 at Broncos 8-5. Another 4 p.m. game right here. Broncos make the playoffs 93% if they win, but only 45% if they lose.
Yeah.
Colts 60% if they win, 6% if they lose.
Yeah, this head-to-head tiebreaker, if the Colts can get it, is big. It's kind of like a snipe. When you look at their goofy record of like wins, it's like perfect to sort of snipe an opportunity away from the Broncos.
I think that also is related to the schedule in the last 3 weeks is easier for the Colts than the Broncos, I think.
I think the Colts have this corny, I was talking about it earlier, this corny schedule late in the week, late in the year. It is, one moment, please. Titans, Giants, Jaguars down the stretch.
Yeah, so the Colts are going to have an easier time down the stretch. So that's why it's 60%, because the Colts would still be a game behind the Broncos if they win this.
Right.
But they'll have the tiebreaker and the easy schedule going forward.
Right. And I think they have some other win rattling around in there that the Broncos don't have, but I'd have to go dig it up. By the way, clean injury reports, both teams pretty healthy. Clean weather report in Denver, clear in the low 50s on Sunday.
The Broncos with a major pass rush advantage. They are third in pass rush win rate, and this is really surprising. First in pass blocking, while the Colts are 22nd in pass rushing and 28th in pass blocking.
The blocking thing is surprising. I know Bowles has been having a good year. It's been just solid. But you don't look at that Broncos offensive line and say, oh, yeah, these guys are just crushing it.
Bowles is going to be a really interesting free agent, by the way, because he's older, but he's coming off a really good year.
Yes. And he's generally been consistent. He's usually in his worst seasons okay, and in his best seasons sort of at a Pro Bowl level. Not Trent Williams in that you can say, oh, we can expect him to play till he's 38. But somebody I would invest in. It's interesting that the Broncos have been quiet on that front.
Richardson is 28th among quarterbacks in DVOA under pressure. So that pass rush, Nick Bonito and Jonathan Cooper, and they get to him, and Richardson is going to be, he'll run all over the place too, but the inaccuracy is going to be very inaccurate.
He could throw the ball out of the stadium in the mile high altitude. He could absolutely get that ball into the parking lot. I pulled this one up on Richardson. His completion rate on short passes, 0 to 15 yards or 15 and under, his completion rate on these short passes is 53.9%. That's the worst in the NFL. It's 8 percentage points worse than Mason Rudolph in second place, followed by Jacoby Brissett and Cooper Rush. I don't like being a Richardson like Grinch, but like it's really, when you watch it, it's like mesmerizingly bad.
Tyler Sperry says Denver does have the best defensive player in football, which brings up a question. What is Riley Moss's status on the injury report?
Oh, he's the only one on it, and he is hurt.
Okay, because it's very interesting. Last week, people were like, oh, look at the Broncos are getting passed on because no Riley Moss is there. And I'm like, obviously teams want to avoid Surtain, but Riley Moss comes out really bad in the charting stats, like surprisingly bad. And I asked Dan Pizzuta about this because he has charting stats from a different company. I don't remember which company it is that supplies 33rd team.
Okay.
But they also have Riley Moss really bad. And I was like, what is all this talk about how much the Broncos are missing? Like, does Moss come out with bad charting stats just because everyone is constantly throwing at him to stay away from Surtain? Or is he maybe not as good as people seem to think he is? I thought that was interesting.
It's Jaquan McMillan, who gets hammered the most in terms of pure targets and things like that. And I think teams go after both him and Moss. So maybe when you take Moss out of the equation, it's like more McMillan, and I think Levi Wallace is the other guy.
Yeah, Levi Wallace was a problem.
Right. So there's places to go. But, it's really – and I think I haven't really studied Moss. I think he's probably fine. He's like, sort of one of your nickel guys. It's built around the pass rush, which comes from all angles, and Surtain.
Right, it's strange because Surtain does not cover the other team's number one receiver.
They do move
as much as you would think. The Broncos are 28th in DVOA against number one receivers.
Right. And I think part of that is teams move them all over the place to get them to McMillan and Ross.
Which is Pittman is a guy you can move around.
Right. Now, he's actually limited on the injury report. I said it was clean. It wasn't super clean. But I think he's playing. The rhetoric around him was fine. You can move guys around. You can try to get the ball to downs. Your problem is your quarterback who just kind of sprays the ball and doesn't necessarily trust what he sees downfield.
The other thing I checked on this game is when you're talking about the Colts defense, you have to talk about cover 3. Bo Nix is 19th in DVOA against cover 3 this year.
Nix is like 19th in like a lot of things.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and the thing is, you got to realize he started the season like at 27th and has worked his way up to like 16th, and that's kind of what you're looking at right now. But we've talked about it every week. He's been coming around steadily as a quarterback.
Broncos -4. I'm not a Colts believer.
I went looking because the Colts are the Colts for something they were in the top 10 in, like in any category. Like this team has a playoff chance. They should be in the top 10 in some categories. Give me 1 second. Here are all the categories I found that the Colts are in the top 10 on. They're 10th in offensive sack rate, 10th fewest sacks allowed. That's good. 9th in kickoff return average, 9th in field goal percentage, and 10th in fourth down percentage. They're not in the top 10 in anything on defense. Anything. There's nothing really good about this team. They've just won some games.
They're 6th in DVOA against deep passes.
Okay, all right.
But 25th against 15 yards or less.
Okay, so they take away, and Bo Nix now throws downfield.
So maybe Bo Nix is a little less of the throwing deep and a little bit more of being Beauregard sideways and
finding that place in between.
And the Broncos will be fine.
I think the Broncos are going to win this one with defense. I didn't look at the over/under, but I'm going to take the Broncos on this.
Yeah. Tyler Sperry says Surtain has shut down everyone's number one receiver except one. He hasn't. I don't know. Maybe we disagree about who is defined as the number one receiver, but they really are 28th in DVOA against number one receiver. When you throw to your number one receiver against the Broncos, they are doing well. The efficiency is good.
Right.
So the question is, that's probably not being covered by Surtain because Surtain's numbers are great.
There's also sometimes a thing where he's left isolated, so he gives up some catches and it doesn't look good in the charting, but it's the results.
His looks good in the charting this year, though, man. Surtain looks great.
Right.
He's a DPOY candidate. There's no question about
it. Tell us who was the one that wasn't shut down. If you could come in and tell us that in the chat, because I didn't have time.
Well, Judy.
Okay. Oh, okay.
But that wasn't Surtain. Surtain wasn't really covering. Every time Judy had those big passes, it was like, oh, look, Levi Wallace again, right?
Yeah, and that's it. Opponents are really aggressively moving guys around. Maybe it was Drake London. I'm trying to see who the number one is that he didn't handle, but
I don't have time to open the whole.
And the thing is, he's good. He's good.
Yeah, we're not saying Surtain's not good. We're not saying Surtain's not good. We're just saying this is how offenses are trying to attack the Broncos because Surtain is so good.
Right.
Packers 9-4 at Seahawks 8-5. That is the night game. Packers 100% of the time make the playoffs with a win. I don't know if that's a rounding thing or if they really are in with a win.
Right.
95% with a loss. Seahawks 71% with a win and 39% with a loss. Packers are up to third in DVOA with the close loss to Detroit. Packers are only 29th against tight ends, but the Seahawks don't use a lot of their tight ends.
No, they got Noah Fant out there, but they have the 3 wide receiver attack that they rely on. Some good Packers injury news. Jair Alexander was a full participant in practice. He's been limited for weeks.
That would be great, especially because Seattle can go 3 wide with 3
They can go 3 wide and cause all kind of problems in the Packers. Nobody has the depth to go 3 wide with anybody, but the Packers without Alexander are a problem. Romeo Doubs is still in the concussion protocol, which he's been in for several weeks, but he was a full participant, which seems like he may be moving through that. He's a big part of their offense. So is Luke Musgrave, who's been out for weeks. He was back, but limited in practice. They could go back to having their full complement of the battery of weapons that we talked about for the Packers.
An interesting thing here is we know Seattle has had problems in the red zone on offense for years. The Packers defense is 23rd in the red zone, including 29th on passes. So that is a weakness versus weakness.
Interesting, which means we might not see the Geno get the snap go over his head play, or the Geno throw the chuck it at a defender play, which we saw a few times this year.
Packers offense also struggles in 3rd and long. The Packers offense is top 10 on every down and distance combo, except 25th on 3rd and long.
Interesting, considering the talents of their guys. But again, they've been sort of shorthanded on their guys. They've also had a drop pass. I don't have it in front of me right now. They had a drop pass problem this year. I believe they're 2nd and 3rd in the league in drop passes. I think a few of them might have been 3rd and long situations.
Michael Allen Brewer points out that some poor team next year is going to draw the Packers as their 3rd place team from the NFC North assignment. Yeah, three teams will draw that, and that will be tough.
That will be tough. And
I don't know what the division setup specifically is for next year, but yeah.
No, I don't want to be the other, I guess, the AFC North having to face the NFC North.
Frankly, by the way, the same is true of the Denver Broncos.
Yeah.
The Denver Broncos are a very good team that will likely be a 3rd place team.
I can see them creeping into 2nd.
Compare that to the fact that in the AFC East, you may end up with New England as the 3rd place team.
I love in the NFL where we think like the schedules are so imbalanced. They really are imbalanced in the NFL, and you see results of that every single year.
One other thing I looked at, Jordan Love is 4th in DVOA with man coverage.
That's interesting.
Seattle runs a very average zone and man split.
Okay.
So they don't run more zone than man, and they don't run more man than zone. They're very average in how much they split them, but Jordan Love is very good this year against man. I guess that also might be an issue with that also might be because of who his receivers are, like Goff.
Right. There's a mismatch somewhere. There's a mismatch somewhere that you can possibly get when you're playing man against the Packers.
Line is Packers -3.
I'm trying to believe in the Seahawks. I would like that division to get clarity. So I'd like the Niners to win and the Seahawks to win. And I want that because I want to stop thinking about these teams, but I don't believe in the Seahawks. And the Packers, having just written a bunch about them, really are strong up and down on offense and are getting healthier. So I'm going with the Packers.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Packers too. DVOA really does love them this year compared to the Seahawks. And Jair Alexander healthy would be a really nice bonus.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, that does it for our Week 15 preview, folks. Thank you again to everybody who watches live. We do this live on 11 a.m. on Mondays and Thursdays. Please like and subscribe to the show. I swear this time I will remember to get it online immediately.
Yeah, there were questions, yes.
Michael Allen Brewer does ask, should the do not bet on the Falcons rubric be extended to all bird teams?
Temporarily, yes.
No, you can bet on the Eagles. Come on now.
I don't know, man. I would say let's put a 1 week freeze. All bird teams. Don't bet
on all bird team bets. No bird team bets. That shows a lot of belief in the New England Patriots, because I will tell you my pick of the week at the FTN pick of the week for subscribers. My pick of the week was Cardinals -5.5.
Oh, I kind of like that. Even though, again, the Patriots injury report looked real nice.
Yeah, but this is a get right game for the Cardinals, right? This is like, Oh, yeah. Well, we have problems with other NFC West teams, but we're going to go out and clobber the terrible Patriots defense.
All right. Bet the Cardinals. Bet the Cardinals. So we're not going to put a moratorium on bird teams.
We'll be back on Monday to review Week 15. Make sure you're subscribing to MikeTanier.substack.com. Make sure you're subscribing to the FTN Stats Hub. And, we'll see you Monday morning, everybody. So long.